Force Squad, and they call me Mr. Geiger, alongside Jeff Hornacek and the mad scientist Brian Banner. We're doing a review on M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable. If you guys want to get all caught up before Glass comes out this month, check out the links below to rent and or buy Unbreakable or Split. We will grade this review like we grade all the other shit in our lives on our 5 criteria: acting, story, best scene, impacts on pop culture, and rewatchability. So let's throw it to the mayor himself, Jeff Hornacek, with acting and cast.
All right, bro, back. Haven't done one of these bad girls in a while. So I literally just rewatched this movie like probably 10 minutes before we got on, because you know me, I like to cut everything close to the last minute. If you listen to any of our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reviews that Banner and I do, I have to shit on a bad child actor in this before we really get into the stars. And that is Johnny Jameson, who plays young Elijah, which is Samuel L. Jackson's character. I cannot believe that the take of his scene with his mom that they put in this movie is the best one that M. Night Shyamalan got. And I'm not surprised that he doesn't even have a photo on his IMDb page. So I'm sorry, kid. I hope your life worked out, but clearly acting was not where it's supposed to be.
He's probably a CPA now.
Probably. I'm sure his life is fine. It just acting wasn't the route that God intended for him to take. I'll leave a lot of the big hitters to you guys, but I will say this: this is Bruce Willis's sweet spot, a brooding character with a lot of mystery behind him. We get Samuel L. Jackson in the early aughts when he still had a lot of gas left in the tank, and Robin Wright as Audrey. Although she's almost like too damaged in this movie to really give you like an actual performance. Like every scene, she's like crying or is like, God, my life fucking sucks. She just adds to the star power, and I bought her and Bruce Willis, David Dunn's character is really having a fucked up marriage. So again, a lot of A-listers, or 3 A-listers at least, in their prime in this movie. It was good to see M. Night pull out of him the performances that he did.
Banner?
Yeah, I think you really hit. I want to talk about Samuel L. Jackson, because you said he still had a lot left in the tank at this point, and I would almost argue that this is when he started to really take off, where he's in every single fucking movie he's in for like $4. But he shows that he can be in every fucking movie and still do a good job. Like, he still cares every time he's in a movie. And playing such a fragile character physically, but such a monster mentally, I thought he did a really good job in this. Yeah, we always make fun he's in every movie, but dude can act, and this right here is proof.
So you touched on Bruce Willis, you touched on Samuel L. Jackson, which actually I still think they got a lot in the tank. It's just you need someone to get those performances out of them. I just want to talk about M. Night Shyamalan for a little bit. I know this is acting and cast, but he
was in it. He had a cameo.
He did have a cameo, but he got a lot of these
Loophole.
people to act, and he casted probably most of them. But rewatching this film, it felt like Glass and Bruce Willis' character, it just felt like I already knew them. It felt like this was a comic book, but it wasn't. M. Night totally came up with this story, and that's very hard to do. It'd be like similar to like Hancock or something, where we had no prior knowledge of these characters. It's just watching this movie, and he does a fantastic job of character development, making you care about the characters, their families, their backstories, everything like that. Jeff touched on that. It's Bruce Willis's hot spot with the brooding character, who he plays to a T, but M. Night definitely deserves a pat on the back. And talk about sweet spots, the 2000s. He fucking rocked the early 2000s, which a lot of his movies.
Oh, yeah.
So going right into story, Jeff, you're the freshest off this movie, so you can go ahead and take it.
So it's actually kind of weird. This story really doesn't have much of a narrative. Like, you don't even really know what the story is until kind of the last 10 minutes, because it's really just Bruce Willis's character, David Dunn, survives a train crash. He's the only one to live, obviously. And this weird guy keeps coming to him like, dude, I think you're like unbreakable. And that's not really a story at all. Now, at the very end, I mean, I guess we can spoil it. If you haven't fucking seen an 18-year-old movie and you're listening to this, or 19-year-old movie, what's your deal, bruh? But at the very end, you realize that, all right, Samuel L. Jackson, Mr. Glass, has actually been kind of setting up all these dominoes the entire time, looking for someone like Bruce Willis. So it's kind of a weird narrative, because, again, it's an interesting character drama until the very end. But that's kind of, I don't want to say there is, I guess, a twist that M. Night kind of puts in his vintage formula, but it had a very quick runtime for an hour and 40 minutes, and it was just kind of an interesting way to tell a story, which I really appreciated. I don't know. I still kind of don't know how I feel about the way the story's told, but I think I like it.
Banner?
I I think the story is really cool. I mean, it's original, but it was also a little bit ahead of its time. I mean, in the early 2000s when this came out, we were kind of done with comic book movies and the way that they were being done with the Batman movies, and we had like 4 or 5 different Superman movies, but it was before the Batman Begins and Dark Knight, and then what we know as the MCU and DCU today. So it kind of hit right in the middle. It is a comic book movie, even though there isn't a comic book to it.
Oh, dude, comic books are a huge part of
yeah.
the
I mean,
story.
that's what it is about, even though it's not the source. There is no comic book source material, and I think the story is very original, which is refreshing because you don't get a lot of that in that genre of movie. So I thought it was great. The whole idea of having an opposite for every action, there is a reaction. You have Glass, who he wipes his ass and breaks his arm, and then you have Bruce Willis.
You got to get in there.
Yeah, you got to get in there. You got to make sure it's clean. You know, he shakes his wiener and it falls off, but you got to make sure there's no pee left on it. But then you have the opposite where Bruce Willis can't. I mean, he's unbreakable. So I think that's a cool concept to play with as well.
I love the comic book dynamic in this movie that Jeff touched on. It's not a comic book movie, but comics are. I mean, Glass has been reading comics since he's little, and he basically has the question that we all had when we were little: are there heroes among us? You know, our parents will tell us these comic books aren't real, but sometimes we'll see like LeBron James or some like Jack White on guitar and be like, dude, he's not all human. There's something else to him. So I like the story on that end, that there's comics actually in it. It's not from a comic book. It's semi-believable. I mean, there's some stuff there that you're like, this probably wouldn't happen. But the overall story, man, it felt really Nolan-esque to me. Like it was
shot
Batman
like a Nolan movie, I think.
Yeah, it was definitely. So, of course, I fucking dug it. So going right into best scene, I'll just take this one really quick. Whenever his kid tries to shoot him just to basically kind of disprove that he's fucking unbreakable, that going from kid actors, Jeff, I thought he did a pretty good job in that scene, actually. It's either that I like a lot of the scenes he has with his kid whenever he's lifting weights in the basement too, and you know, the kid's like, how much did you take off? He's like, I didn't take anything off. I actually added it, and you lifted the whole thing. The give and take between Willis and a kid actor after, I believe, he came off of Sixth Sense. I believe this was before this movie. So he's been working with kid actors for a while now. But this kid actor, you know, he measured up, man. I think he was as good as Haley Joel Osment. What about you, Jeff? Best scene?
Yeah, so interesting note, again, to tie it back into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The guy who plays his son, Spencer Treat Clark, is in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He plays Wolfgang von Strucker, and he is actually in the cast list for Glass as well, which I thought was pretty cool. I didn't see Robin Wright in the cast list. Again, it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie. I could fucking be in the movie. You don't know. But he is at least returning, which is kind of cool. I also loved in that scene where he, like, how strict is that household? They yell to Joseph, his son, we don't shoot people, like it's a rule they've had to remind him of a few times. Finish your vegetables and don't shoot people, Joseph. My favorite scene is when Bruce Willis gets the instructions from Glass. He's like, here's how you're going to figure out your fucking powers. Go to a really crowded area, and he goes to that train depot, and he just starts to sense all the horrible things that the shitty people there have done. The one guy rapes that unconscious girl. The other dude breaks into someone's house. I can't remember what the third guy did, but he follows the one guy back to the home where he's holding a family hostage. So that whole thing was kind of my favorite scene, where David Dunn was kind of realizing, okay, I have these abilities. Maybe Mr. Glass isn't totally crazy. And basically after that, he confirms to his son, like, yeah, dude, your dad's a badass. So it was like a 15-minute scene. So that's kind of cheating, but that was my favorite part of the film.
Banner, best scene?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of you. I'm going at the scene when he's at the stadium and he's a security guard, and he senses that dude, he's like 10 or 15 people back about to go through the metal detectors, and he's packing a gun. Mm-hmm. And he senses that, and then, you know, whatever happens, and the guy ends up walking away, and Glass ends up finding him later on. That was kind of a cool scene as well. And then Glass ends up showing up at the football stadium, basically saying, hey, dude, you are a superhero. I just think that whole scene was cool, and just the idea of how he figures out his powers is it's just a cool. It was very well done, very well written. You have to give it up to Shyamalan.
What I loved about that scene, Banner, is you almost see that Dunn has been in denial about his powers because Samuel L. Jackson's like, well, how did you know he had a gun and not a knife? And he's like, I don't know, man. I just fucking knew it. And Glass goes, yeah, dude, normal people don't have that ability. So, like, that's not something your waitress at Waffle House can tell. So there's something special
I
with
don't know
you.
what Waffle House you're going to, but mine's magical.
Same one as Tiger Woods.
So impacts on pop culture, which is kind of cheating. I mean, obviously from this movie we get Split. Glass is coming out in a couple weeks. I don't really know what else to say about this. It's a beginning of a trilogy that we didn't really, I guess, see happening in 2000. Other than that, M. Night Shyamalan at the time was red hot and had a couple good movies on the horizon, but had a lot of shitty movies on the horizon. But other than that, I don't really have much to say about impacts. What about you, Banner?
This movie, bear with me, hang on in there with me, saves Shyamalan's career. Because this movie was great. Like you said, he had a couple of good ones after this, and then he went on a drought for 15 years until Split. If we didn't have Unbreakable, we wouldn't have Split. I don't think. I think that he had this story as an arc already lined out, but for whatever reason, he didn't pursue Split and then now Glass earlier. And now he's like, wait a minute, I still know what the fuck I'm doing. Pulls this out, 15 years later, now almost 20 years later to complete the trilogy or even have more. I don't know.
There has been interviews before that Shyamalan has said that he had the Split idea back on Unbreakable. Now, is that true or not? We don't know. We just have to take him on his word. But he has had this idea, according to him, since Unbreakable with Split and Glass.
So, again, I think that right there shows that this movie, your impact is that it saved his career.
Yeah, nothing makes you more desperate than when you do Lady in the Water and The Last Airbender consecutively. You're like, all right, well, if we have a fucking ace in the hole, now's the time we have to play it.
Yeah, the question is, why didn't he play it earlier?
He was really backed into a corner.
It's because the happening, man, that one was going to hit.
I just have a quick impact. Since I just rewatched this, I picked up on it. But at the very end of Split, when sort of the twist is revealed, the music that starts playing is the main score from this. It's the intro music, and it's the music playing in the scene where David Dunn goes to the depot and is like having all the visions of all the people. So once that music started playing, again, for me, it had been 15 years since I'd last seen Unbreakable. But that was, I thought like a really cool kind of nod. And obviously the impact, like you guys both said, we got Split and we're getting Glass.
Yeah. So, throw it back to you, Jeff, right into rewatchability.
So, this is a good movie. I still prefer Split. And I think mainly just because the James McAvoy character of Kevin is way more interesting to me than like anyone in this movie, which isn't really an indictment on any of these characters, because I think to me that's one of the most interesting characters we've had in like the last 2 or 3 years in a film. But I do think the interesting thing about Unbreakable is it kind of subverts the superhero genre, and it looks at it in a way where comic books exist in this universe. Uh-huh. And also like the characters in it are sort of the embodiment of that, which really no other, at least to my knowledge, superhero movie does, where it's like acknowledges that comics exist in the movie, and then it's also about characters based on comics. And just as, I guess this kind of is more of an impact, but since I forgot to mention it, in my opinion, this is the probably third best M. Night Shyamalan film. I would put it behind Signs and The Sixth Sense, but if I rewatch Split again tomorrow, it might pass this. I'm not sure.
Brian?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't one that I think about and go, oh, shit, I'm going to watch this. I'm going to pop it in. But if it's on TV, I'm like, oh, shit, that's a good movie. I think like last year, or maybe 2 years ago, it was on HBO. I sat down and watched it. I was like, oh, shit, I haven't watched this movie in a while. It's a good movie. So, yeah, I'll rewatch it, but it's not something I'm going to seek out to rewatch. It's something that the opportunity is going to present itself to me.
Yeah, it's sad for me. This rewatchability actually went up after Split, and it'll probably even go up even more after Glass, which I hate to say that because that's Hollywood's problem right now is they're just making sequels and trilogies and 10 movies of everything, and it's sad you can't just have a good movie anymore. You just can't have The Town. You just can't have Southpaw. You got to make 5 of them. This is a great movie, and I didn't really watch it. And then once Split came out, I'm like, oh shit, that connects to Unbreakable. And then I went home and watched it. Other than that, I would not have watched it at all. I try to make myself watch just one-off movies a lot that are just good movies, but this rewatchability goes up because it is a trilogy now, and the second one was awesome. And Split, the first looks at Glass looks like it's fucking gonna be badass too. So it's gonna be a 3-movie trilogy with 3 good movies. So this rewatchability is only going up for me. That's all I got. You guys pumped for Glass?
I am.
Yeah.
I think after seeing this, I wasn't that interested in seeing Samuel L. Jackson's character again, but rewatching Unbreakable, I'm fucking ready.
No, he fucks in this. He's really good.
If you'd have told me Bruce Willis is probably the worst actor out of the 3 of them that are going to be in this movie, I'd tell you you're crazy. But then when you think about it, you got Samuel L. Jackson, and James McAvoy's portrayal of Kevin is absolutely absurd. The talent that he has, and you're right. Bruce Willis is probably the least talented out of the 3 of them.
And
Right,
that's
the Sarah Paulson's twist in this too, actually.
exactly, yeah. That's the weird thing is David Dunn is like the least interesting character in the new movie to me, and that it definitely includes Sarah Paulson's therapist character.
All right, guys, we're the Bro4 Squad. Follow us on Letterboxd. Tweet at us on Twitter at Bro4 Squad. Subscribe to us on YouTube and iTunes, and you can find everything on our website, www.bro4squad.com. Till then, we'll see you in or around the theater.
Do you think JD Drew has the same disease that Glass had? I missed like 1,000 games.
God, dude. God, he was supposed to be so good.
He was hurt fucking every night, right?
He was. He had a lot of time.